All right, we are live. We are going to fire up the postgame show in 3, 2, 1. Welcome in, Bears fans, to not your average Bears postgame show. I am your host, Bill Zimmerman, and I am joined this week by Danny Meehan of Windy City Gridiron. You can catch Danny on Bare Bones with Mason West on Thursday evenings. Does a great job there. Great job analyzing the game and looking at prospects and other things in the offseason. Brings a lot to the table. So we're going to ask him to bring a lot to the table today after a rough 27-17 loss as the Bears fall to 0-2. Danny, I'll just start with you and kind of give me your initial thoughts here because, it was a bit of a roller coaster. They gave a glimmer of hope there in the fourth quarter, but this, other than that opening drive and that glimmer of hope in the fourth quarter, this was a rough one on a lot of different levels.
Oh, first off, you give me a lot of credit, thinking I know what I'm talking about. I don't. I'm just kind of a fan who seems to let my thoughts sink in versus, shooting from the hip, as it were. But it was a rough game, man. Like, you and I were talking before we went live, and it's like, I don't think either of us were expecting playoffs or even to be anything more than fun and watchable. And it's like, time is a flat circle. It's not fun. It's not watchable. It's just, what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah, and that's really where I am, and this is where I'm from. There's a Justin Fields aspect to it that's very frustrating that we're going to get to and spend a lot of time on it because we have to. But just kind of the overall with this team, I know there were a lot of Bears fans and some local Bears media and content creators that were sitting there going, I think this team can make a playoff run. I think 9-10 wins is there. That wasn't my thought process. My thought process going into this year, and I said it on my podcast regularly, was we're going to have struggles. We're going to have ups and downs, but we're going to have fun as Bears fans this year because we're going to see Justin Fields growing. We haven't had DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, and Chase Claypool, like that much talent at the wide receiving core, maybe ever. Because you can go back to like Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. They didn't have that third guy like Claypool in theory can be, and in theory is a lot here with Chase after the first couple games. We'll get into Chase as well, but I thought this was going to be fun. We're going to get some explosive plays. We're going to have some games where we put up some points. There were going to be some struggles as well. But what I'm seeing right now, Danny, and I guess we're going to start with coaching and kind of Matt Eberflus, and let's kind of talk about the coaching and the preparation overall before we kind of get into specifics offensive and defensively with the coaching. Is this team, and I understand there has been a lot of distractions going around the team. Nate Davis dealing with a personal issue, Alan Williams dealing with a personal issue, neither of them at the game. I understand there's things that can be distractions. But beyond that, this team feels unprepared in each of the last 2 weeks in a lot of ways. It was better this week, obviously, than last week. But the coaching, Danny, to me, isn't there right now. And a top to bottom kind of the CEO coach, I'm looking at you, Matt Eberflus. I am really frustrated because, and I said this, I gave the coaching a pass last year because I didn't know what it was. There was such a weak amount of talent on the field. It was really hard to decipher what was talent and what was coaching. But there is enough talent. There's holes on this roster, but there is enough talent that there should be better coaching and this team should have better synergy and better flow. And it does not right now.
It's that, and it almost feels like this whole team, coaching and roster, came in with like a sense of entitlement. Like we heard like them saying like how chippy they were, Barkey, especially the defense was in the crossover practices in Indianapolis with the Colts, and like how they were being like almost salty to the point where they think they earned something when it's like you didn't earn a damn bit of anything, right? Like. And then you bring up the fact that Matt Eberflus is supposed to be the CEO head coach. He is supposed to be overseeing everything. And this is how you come out. Now, granted, I actually think the defense was better. It wasn't as vanilla as last week. They mixed up some pressure packages and coverage packages and everything, like at least from what it looked like on the media copy. But it still leaves a lot to be desired, especially with everything you invested into this team. Like the amount that was invested specifically into the offense between DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, like Cole Kmet got his money. You drafted Darnell Wright. You paid Nate Davis. And I get Nate Davis hasn't been there. You traded for Dan Feeney. And I get it's only a 6th-round pick. But there's things that, like, need to be questioned, not questioned, that's not a word, but questioned because of the investment that's gone specifically into the offensive side of the ball. And then the reports you were getting out of camp and practices saying how this defense was acting a certain type of way. Like, you come and conduct yourself a certain type of way, you better perform a certain type of way, right? It's like that in any aspect.
Sure.
It could be what I do on the fire department. It could be what you do in sports radio producing, whatever it might be, right? But it needs to kind of manifest itself instead of just being a lot of hubbub.
Yeah, look, it absolutely does, and I agree with you. There was something you want to sit there, and here's the fine line. You want to sit there and the fine line between confidence and cocky, and a confident defense, even if you quote haven't earned it, I'm fine with that, believing in yourself and all that. But yeah, there was this kind of chip on your shoulder, like, hey, we're here. We don't need this criticism, this kind of thing, and that was odd, and that's where I just. What Matt Eberflus, kind of what he preached a year ago versus kind of what we heard from him this offseason was wildly different. And I don't know why the approach changed. You know, I mean, maybe he was just trying to establish himself and his, structure and all last year and kind of expected them to kind of go forward with it this year. But it didn't work in training camp. And that's the thing. Training camp preseason, it's hard to throw up a lot of red flags because it's training camp and preseason. It's practices. There's not a lot going on. But when I had Aaron Lemming on to kind of do our season preview, we were both kind of sitting there going, I just don't like the vibe of this team right now. It was tough to kind of place your finger on it. And there were a lot of different things going on. But, we talked basically 10 days before the Packers game. And both of us just felt uneasy about where this team was mentally, physically, preparedness entering the season. And through 2 games, unfortunately, it looks like we were correct.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the entitlement thing really seems to be rearing its ugly head. Like, they really felt like between all the, like, specifically the Bill Barnwell article comes to mind where he cited the Vikings, I think, is the biggest team for regression, and the Bears is one of the 2 or 3 biggest teams for progression, like making their presence felt. And it's just like, did you let the press clippings get to you? Did you let the 4 or 5 game stretch where you led the NFL in scoring really get to your head? It's so hard to really pick the moment of which it came, because this team won 3 games last year. It held the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, which they willingly traded away. And this is what you look like.
Yeah. Like, and here's the thing. I agree with you about kind of the press clippings thing, because there were spatterings of people who were very high on the Bears this year. But there were plenty that weren't. I mean, the Vegas had the over-under at 7.5. That's, that's a losing record, even if you hit the over potentially. There most of the power rankings coming from NFL writers, the Bears were, the high end was 23, 24.
Right.
It was frustrating to me because I saw a lot of writers putting them at 26, 27, 20. I'm like, oh, come on. They're better than that. The fan in me was getting, but it was mixed reviews going into this team. So the fact that there was any level of entitlement, to me, that goes back to the coaching. And that's where this gets just kind of so frustrating. And before we keep going on, I just want to say, those of you listening live right now, appreciate you listening. If you've got comments, questions, we are going to get to those a little bit later in this post-game podcast. So make sure you drop them in the comments section. We will get to them. But Danny, while we're talking about coaching, let's go to the defensive game plan, since we're talking about Matt Eberflus. The defensive game plan, like it was kind of an odd game defensively, because you got to give the Bears credit. They didn't give up a ton of points to the Bucs, especially with how much the offense sputtered, in the second and third quarter. They only gave up 20, get rid of the pick 6. They only gave up 20 points in total. That's pretty good. But at the same time, 440 yards thereabouts in offense they gave up. Positives and negatives from the defensive side of the ball. What did you see?
I think the positive was they did look like they had a renewed life like, and it's completely anecdotal. You can only like go off of what you're watching on TV, especially on the first walkthrough or the first watch through on Fox. There's only so much you can take from that. But I thought they showed up with a lot more energy. I think Andrew Billings is a really good football player. Like,
yeah, I mean, he brings
pops
a lot
off
to the
the
table.
screen, but it's like him and then Walker, and then you're just left searching for answers. Yannick Ngakoue should have had 2 sacks, if not more, if he just finishes the play on Baker Mayfield. I get Baker Mayfield as a stronger, stout quarterback, but like, just, dude, you're getting paid
Wrap up
$9-10 million. Finish the hit. Like, wrap up, like you said. I appreciated that they dialed up some pressure packages. I appreciate that they clearly weren't just sitting in the base Tampa 2 or cover 2. But, like, at a certain point, you still also let up nearly 500 yards to a Baker Mayfield-led offense when they really couldn't run the ball much. Like, and I get it, like, what was it, 50 yards of it came off of a clear Mike Evans offensive pass interference that went completely neglected by the team, or by the officiating crew. But that's not an excuse. Like, that was so early in the game.
Sure. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I look at this and look, you can pinpoint a lot of different things. There were obviously mistakes. There were injuries, obviously, to the secondary coming into the game and then added to it. That certainly didn't help either. But at the same time, some of the basic things that defenders need to do, like, I was really bothered. The end around that they had in the first quarter that the Bucs did. I mean, DeMarcus Walker he was supposed to set the edge over there. He just crashed down hard and just left a huge lane for the Bucs to score. Like, it's little things like that. I'm like, you've got to do your job. You've got to know what you're supposed to do within the confines of the play call. And to me, there were still, again, like you said, it's tough to see on the first watch. When you come back and rewatch the game, you'll learn a lot more about what happened. But at the same time, players need to be doing their jobs. And I think that there is a lack of trust a lot of times with some of these more established players, maybe with the rookies or the lesser players, where they're trying to do the job of 2 players and they end up not doing the job of any player.
Right. And you wonder how much of it is like overcompensation and frustration and just like kind of to like the first part of the overcompensation of like, you don't trust Gervon Dexter at this point in his career to go and make a play or do his assignment. How much is that DeMarcus Walker overcompensating, crashing not setting says crashing in super hard and then just compromising the edge? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. It's very frustrating because you don't know, but what you do know is that this team is sitting at 0-2 with a trip to Arrowhead next week. And I understand the Chiefs haven't exactly been a well-oiled machine at this point in the season, but if anyone thinks that this Bears team, the way it's playing right now, can go into Arrowhead and even compete right now, I'm going to laugh at you because I don't see that at all. But let's switch over to the offensive side of the ball, Danny, because I think that's what people want to hear. That's what people want to talk about right now. And I don't think we need to separate Fields and Getsy. I think we can kind of talk about them together because it's your left hand and your right hand working together here. Yep. There was a lot to be desired here. And we could start with the opening drive. And the opening drive, assuming it was scripted, it worked. They got the ball to DJ Moore. They marched right down the field, 6 plays, I think it was, 75 yards, bam, touchdown. You go, okay. This is the offense that I thought the Bears had the potential to bring this year. And after that opening drive, before they had the drive to put a little hope back in, a glimmer of hope back into Bears fans, I believe it was 34 plays for 62 yards after that opening drive, before they had the successful drive.
Is that
34 plays for 62 yards?
I'm not sure if that's bad or not. It sounds bad, though.
I think it's I think you want to average a little over 2 yards a play. I think that's
more than 2 yards a play is good. Okay. I mean, like you said, it's the left hand, the right hand working together. And I mentioned I know I keep referencing us like pre-show, but I feel it's so two-pronged. Like, I don't know if Luke Getsy's any good at this. Like, I genuinely don't.
It's hard to look at it any other way.
And then the other part of it is like you're hard pressed to find a bigger believer in Justin Fields than me. And I see things like him holding the ball twice by my count on first watch through, where the sack is his fault.
Yep.
There are open players, and he's not throwing the football. Like I get it. We've seen it before, like the famous Sam Darnold thing where he's on the bench and he's saying to his teammate, I'm seeing ghosts out there. Like, and I've been on my old podcast. I've been on the Lunch Pail Draftcast with Jacob Infante on this very channel, saying the worst thing a quarterback can start doing is feeling pressure and seeing ghosts that aren't there, because it's the hardest thing for a quarterback to overcome. And it's not just the offensive play caller. It's not just the quarterback. It always goes hand in hand. But I feel like he's starting to do things and sense things that aren't there. And then you're starting to get to the point of when he does that, it goes back to Luke Getsy. Is the game plan being called because he knows Justin doesn't trust himself? I just don't know it's the chicken or the egg. What happened first? And I don't know the answer to that question.
And that's the thing. I don't think any of us have the answer to this. I don't even know what they know in the quarterback room, how much they know at this point. But the play calling does have, including week one, it has a fear aspect to it.
It does.
Conservative aspect. And again, is it Luke Getsy doesn't trust Justin Fields? Is it Luke Getsy, doesn't think Justin Fields trusts himself? Is Luke Getsy calling the plays and Justin Fields is not ripping it because he doesn't trust himself? Like, there's something is going on here. Something is amiss, whether it's Justin is overthinking, whether they've beaten some of that killer instinct out of him. I'm not sure what it is, because there were moments in this game where he just let it rip and made, the threading the needle to chase Claypool for the touchdown. That was an awesome throw. That was fantastic. And he had a couple others like that were fantastic throws on the move. Even the catch that Komet didn't make, that was a great play on the move. Hit, split two defenders, got it to Komet. Komet needed to hold on to that one. But the fact is, you still see the glimpses of it. But the problem is when I want to see a quarterback come along, and if they're going to come along slowly, year 3 is not the time for glimpses. Year 1 is the time for glimpses. Year 2 is the time where they start stacking maybe drives, but not stacking together a full game. Year 3, we need to see games from Justin Fields. Sure, a mistake or two within a body of a game, fine. But we need to see games from Justin Fields where he is stacking play after play after play after play. And we are not there. Like, these are the type of games you would expect out of a rookie, not a third-year player.
And if I'm going to go hard on Justin Fields, like saying, hey, you're not doing certain things, I got to also then put the glove on the other hand, shoe on the other foot. I don't know if those are sayings, but it sounds right. Where did the quarterback run game disappear to? I get a lot of his running yards last year, rushing yards came from broken plays, et cetera, et cetera. But at a certain point, you have to understand what your personnel does well. And that's on Luke Getsy. What was there, 1 or 2 designed runs today? Like,
one, I don't know if there was 2.
Like, you have to just understand that there's maybe one person in the planet, let alone the league, that can do what Justin Fields can do when he's in the open field. Like, let him go. And I know it's like a weird thing to describe. Fields strikes me as the kind of player, and it's just basing off what I watched last year and his rookie season, that he needs to feel like he's in the game. Like, when he makes a play, when he's
a rhythm player, absolutely.
When he runs through someone or runs by somebody and makes a big play, he feels like he's now a part. It's like a boxer who gets hit in the face and now he's ready to fight. Like, I don't understand a better way to explain it than that. But that's the kind of player he feels like, where he needs to almost, like, I get he had the walk-in touchdown where Chase Claypool fell down and then failed to block and was a fan watching number 1 walk into the end zone. But it's almost like he needs to, like, taste his own blood in his mouth. It's really weird. So he understands, he's like, it's game time. Like, I don't know how else to explain it, but that's just how he feels, almost like he's a rhythm player, like you said, to put an easy terminology to it. But it's like they just don't want to do that.
Yeah, four carries for 3 yards today from Justin Fields. That's what we had.
He ran for 3 yards today.
3 yards.
Fantastic. The guy ran for almost a single season rushing record last year as a quarterback.
And Baker Mayfield, by comparison, had 17.
Even better. I'm not sure about you, Bill, but I'm having fun.
Well, and here's the problem. And you can blame Luke Getsy, you can blame the offensive line, you can blame Justin Fields, whatever you want to do. But this is the reality we're in right now, is we are really starting to creep into 2019 mode. 2019 mode being Mitch Trubisky year 3. Forget 2018 being 12-4. We're talking about the 2019 Mitch Trubisky year 3 leap that we were hoping and expecting as Bears fans, where he really came into his own as a passer and a second year in Matt Nagy's offense, and everything was supposed to start clicking. And that week 1 game, it was not good against the Packers. I think week 2 was against the Broncos. They ended up winning that game, and Mitch did make a play at the end, a tough third down throw at the end of the game, which set up the winning field goal, but he was bad throughout that game. And yeah, I think we're seeing more from Fields than we were from Trubisky. I'm not putting them in the exact same category, but at the same time, you have to be sitting here going, we are 2 games into this season. We're, about 12% into the season, whatever it is. And we are quickly getting into a position that the Bears may not have 2 first-round picks to bolster this team around Justin Fields. The Bears may have 2 first-round picks to replace Justin Fields.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to ignore that kind of hiding truth, as it were. Like I said, you're not going to find a bigger Justin Fields person than me. I'll probably be, to kind of quote my friend Mason, who's my co-host on Bare Bones, like I'm the first at the party, I'll be the last at the funeral, kind of thing. Like I'll be right there with him. Like I don't want to say that. I don't think any Bear fan wants to say it, because I don't think any Bears fan genuinely dislikes Justin Fields. Everything you ever heard about him, everything you've ever seen about him says he should be the guy. But at a certain point, for as much as the Bears have put on a master class in how to ruin a blue chip elite quarterback prospect, he's got to overcome some things. Like I always go back to I was fully out on Mitch after week 1, 2019. You and I were talking then. That was like week 1 was just like me being like, I threw my hands up. Like I can't do this anymore. If your offensive line has to be perfect, if your receivers have to be perfect, if everything in your scenario has to be perfect for you to succeed, you're not the guy.
Right.
That's just how it goes. Am I giving up on Justin Fields? Absolutely not. I'm going to ride this ship to the very bottom. But there's a lot of questions that still need answering, and I don't think we have any answers in sight. And that's the scariest part about this season so far, Bill. Fields hasn't been outright bad. He hasn't been bad enough to the point where you can just say, punt on him, it's time to be done.
Right.
The worst thing that could come of this season is just not having an answer. And so far, I don't think we have an answer.
No, we don't have an answer, and that's the thing. And I understand he only had, 3 yards rushing or whatever today, but there's going to be, at least 30, 40 yards rushing. He's gone over 200 yards. And again, I'm just looking statistically. We know what we're seeing in the body of the game. We're going to I'll isolate a couple plays, and we'll talk about them, good and bad plays for Justin Fields.
Sure.
But just playing the old statistical game, and this is what's dangerous. Justin Fields has got, 200 yards plus passing in each game. He's averaging, even with the 3 yards, he's averaging 30 yards rushing a game. Justin Fields at the end of the year throws for 3,500. If he's healthy for 17 games, throws for 3,500 yards and has, what it would be like 600 yards rushing. People are going to sit there at just box score scout and go, look at that. He's coming into his own. He's getting better. But when you watch the body of the game and see the amount of plays he's leaving on the field, and I'll bring up the one, and I think you were referencing when you talked about where he just held onto the football. There was a play when they were driving, I believe it was second quarter, they were driving, they were in Bucs territory, and he held onto the ball for like 6 or 7 seconds and got sacked. And, when I watched the play originally, I saw DJ Moore kind of did a little, out route and was kind of over by the sidelines. I was like, well, that's an easy one right there. Now, when you watch the replay, you saw there was a guy about 4 or 5 yards up there. It only would have been about a 3 or 4 yard gain. But Roschon Johnson was streaking open up the seam. I mean, wide open. Like, this isn't like the screenshot game where you're like, oh, he wasn't as open as he looks in that. No, he was wide open. It was an easy pitch and catch for a touchdown, or at least inside the 5. It was that wide open. And how he held onto the football for that amount of time and didn't see that is alarming.
It is. And it's like, it's one of the things, like, even if he hits DJ Moore on the 4 or 5 yard out route, you live with it because it's a completion. Whatever. It's not great. You would have rather he take the shot to Roschon, even if it ends up in a pick. Say safety comes cross field and takes the ball away. Like, I say it all the time. People forget a lot of times defenders are paid to make plays too. Sometimes it just happens. But at a certain point, you have to grip it and rip it. Like, and I know the quarterback guy, I forget his name. He's been on 670 The Score, and he's been on Hogan Johns recently the past week, talking about how Fields needs a little more effort to him. And he does. Like, if he – like, I know Jay Cutler rather has a enigmatic Bears existence, to say the least. But if he was even 15-20% of Cutler, where he just had effort to him, like, I'm going to sling this thing, it would be so much better for him, because that's the kind of talent he is. Like, and I just don't know if he should have ripped it to Johnson. At the very least, he should have at least just made the throw to DJ Moore. But I don't know what to do with this 6-7 sack. It's an awful play, and that's right on Justin Fields. The protection is there. He should, in theory, speed read through that, get to Roschon. Oh, crap, he's streaking open, and make that throw, regardless of the outcome. That is the correct decision. Or come down, make your out route throw, live to fight another down. Taking the sack is inexcusable in that situation.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we isolate that play, but there were other plays where he held on to the ball. Now, I'm going to be really interested when I come back and listen and watch this game, because yes, it was 6-7 sacks, whatever the Bucs had. I don't feel like the protection was that bad. Sure, there were some plays where, like, Vita Vea just crushed some people up the middle and just came rumbling through. That's going to happen because, when you got Shaq Barrett, when you got Vita Vea, when you got talented guys like that, you're gonna make some plays like that. That's going to happen. But I thought the protection was much better this week than it was against the Packers. And I think Fields really missed a lot, in terms of pocket feel and presence. And he just wasn't feeling it like he should, and that's usually where he's able to move. And that's where he runs, picks up 7-8 yards, or all the different things that he can do. And he wasn't doing it today. And I just don't know what it was. And, like he, on the touchdown run, he came out there and goes, I'm getting to the pylon before anyone else. And, while we're just kind of on a side note, you brought up Chase Claypool whiffing his block there. But Mercedes Lewis blocked 2 people. Like, that was awesome. Like, I want to see more Mercedes Lewis. I understand he's a 6th offensive lineman, but he helps the offense, Danny. He helps the offense. He's so good at what he does.
Bill, I'm not meaning to laugh at you because you're totally right, because Mercedes Lewis is awesome at what he does. He is legitimately awesome at it. I think the issue that I would point out, and that I'm sure Luke Getsy or Matt Eberflus would tell you, is if he's on the field as a tell. He's telling you exactly what you're going to do.
Well, then how about we do a little more max protect and still throw there's things you can do, Danny. You can be creative.
Bill, you can run the quarterback. You can move the pocket. You can, instead of making full field reads, you can do a play action once in a while even. Believe it or not, play actions are allowed, and they just choose to not do them for some strange reason.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've got no answers, Bill. I've got none.
And that's the thing with Getsy here is, you said it 5-10 minutes ago, you're not sure if he's good at his job. I'm definitely leaning in the negatory in that, because I haven't seen I haven't seen much other than when he told Justin in that New England Miami, stretch last season, goes, just run. Other than that, like, I haven't seen him making decisions that are positively impacting this team. And that's the thing. Like, Danny Parkins last week when I had him on my podcast said, I don't know what Matt Eberflus's edge is for this team, like what he does that's really good, that is helping elevate this team. I don't know what Luke Getsy's edge is with this offense. I don't know what he's bringing. There's a lack of creativity. He's not getting things into rhythm, and it's not all his fault. We just talked about it. There are a lot of mistakes that Justin Fields is making on the field, and he's not making up for them with his big play ability, which is a lethal combination. But Luke Getsy, I really wonder, like, I sit here just stumble over my words because I literally cannot figure out what the game plan is. And it feels so much like Nagy and Trubisky. And I understand it's a different set of personnel, and I understand it's a different play caller and a different, level of talent at quarterback. But it was the same thing. Like, was Nagy an idiot, or was Trubisky not able to run the offense? It turns out, the more you watch it and the more you look back and the more experts look at it, it was coming out of both columns. And that's really where we seem to be headed right now, is that Luke Getsy, I remember Bears fans panicking that Luke Getsy was going to get a head coaching job, and, we were going to lose him as the offensive coordinator. Like, this was a big conversation last year, and at this point now, this looks like Luke Getsy is not going to have a offensive coordinator job in 2024, not in Chicago, not anywhere. He'll get a QB coach job somewhere, something like that. But this offensive coordinator position for him is going south.
Oh, it's going south in a hurry. And you kind of touched on it, Bill. The biggest worry I have right now on the whole is like we're after the 18 season, the 12-4 year, whatever. We already kind of touched on that a little bit. I remember always asking on Rule of Three when that was a show on this network, what is the identity? What do they do that they can hang their hat on? And I couldn't come up with an answer. Ever. They ran mesh a lot. They didn't run it well, but they ran it a lot. And I would always bring up the example of, and God, it sounds so crotchety and old to be like, well, the Lovie Smith Bears could run ISO. But they could. They could run ISO up the middle. And I knew they could get 3 or 4 yards when they needed 3 or 4 yards. What does this Bears team do well? And I thought with Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy, they might have run, especially because the amount that Green Bay ran duos, that duos would come to Chicago, and that would be their bread and butter, their puke play, as it were, from the movie Semi-Pro, where it's like, when you can't do anything else, you can do this because it's just so ingrained in your DNA. And we're back to this point where I watch them, and I don't know what they do well. And that's an indictment on Luke Getsy. It's an indictment on the offense. That's an indictment on the defense. It's an indictment on the whole coaching staff and team, because I still don't know. We are what? Since, hell, I'll even give the Trestman first-year offense something. They had a bread and butter they could go to. I'm sure I haven't gone back and watched Mark Trestman because I fear for my mental health. But we are what? Third regime.
Yeah, I mean, short, quick passing game, Matt Forte. Yeah. I mean, they did some successful things, absolutely.
Sure, but like you're talking about, we're in the third regime since then, and I still am wondering what the hell do we do well here in Chicago as a Bears organization.
And even if you break it down, not just the organization, which I don't know, but even if you break it down year to year, last year there was at least a level of identity, and certainly it helped with Justin Fields running for 1,000 yards, but this team could run the football. They were the number one running team in the league.
Yep.
They had something they could hang their hat on. They literally couldn't do anything else. They couldn't throw the ball. They couldn't play defense at any level. They were basically last in every category, but they could run the football. They had some level of identity. Through 2 games right now, there is no identity. The passing game is weak. The running game is weak. The blocking is weak. The coaching is weak. The defense, it cannot stop the run. I mean, the Bucs may be the worst running team in the league. And I know the Bears did get the ball back, but they got 2 or 3 first downs running the ball before the defense finally got to stop. That's unacceptable. And certainly, Jordan Love throwing for 3 touchdowns, Baker Mayfield throwing for 300 whatever yards. There's problems all over the field right now, and there doesn't look like there's any solutions.
There's not. And the way you said that, Bill, there's a famous little snippet on NFL films from the old Tampa Bay Buccaneers regime. I think it was Rich McKay was the coach. They brought him up from the college level. And he's on the sidelines at practice, and he goes, well, we can't complete a pass. We can't run the ball. We can't stop anybody. But other than that, everything is great.
That sounds about right. Things are going well, everybody.
This is fun. I'm having fun.
All right. Let's, again, if you're watching live, listening live, we appreciate it. And again, if you have comments, make sure you drop them. We're going to get to them here really shortly. But Danny, I do want to isolate a few other players beyond Fields and Getsy, because we can't just keep beating the dead horse here for the rest of this podcast. I've got some positives and some negatives, but let's start with Chase Claypool before we get into some of the other individuals, because obviously that was a huge point of conversation all this week after his woeful effort and performance in week 1. Effort did seem better this week, but he still left a lot on the field. I understand touchdown reception, had a couple nice plays, but also did some things that weren't great.
Well, he still just seems to lack any sort of desire to block, which in this offense running or short passing game, he's going to have to block, like it or not. That's just how the offense is.
6'4", 240? Put a body on somebody.
Yeah, just get in the way. Be a minor nuisance. Like, I'm not asking for you to be Hines Ward out there. Just be a nuisance. But there's the other on the out route that eventually got called as an incompletion out of bounds. It was initially ruled an interception, but then they ruled he was juggling it out of bounds. Yes, Fields was late to the out route. 2 things can be true, though. He can be late to the out route, and you can just fail to fight for the ball. And that was also true. He has no urge or no fight in him to it's getting to the point. I never want to question professional athletes' love of the sport or want to play the sport. But I'm getting to a point with Chase Claypool specifically where it's like, do you even want to play football? Because I genuinely don't know, because it doesn't show in any way, shape, or form. Like, I know we've heard I've brought it up before, where Russell Westbrook is notoriously I don't talk about basketball unless I'm at the arena, because he's got interests outside of basketball. The difference is Russ is an MVP and 11-time All-Star or something like that.
And what you say about Westbrook, with all the, and I know this is not a basketball podcast, but with all the faults in Russ Westbrook's game, have you ever watched Russell Westbrook and go, that guy's not making a 100% effort out on the court? It may be a mess sometimes what he's doing, but the effort is there. This is not James Harden. This is Russ Westbrook. It's different.
Yeah, he's a lunatic. He just doesn't care to talk about basketball off the court. And that's where and I actively stood up for Chase in the offseason, where everyone was dogging him for doing the fashion show and everything. I actively said it's okay for athletes to have interests outside of their profession. It's human, in fact. But it doesn't look like he's even interested in what's paying his bills. And that's not just irritating, it's concerning, because a guy this talented should not be looking the way he does.
No, and I mean, I'll bring up Matt Clapp, who is a Bears fan and a columnist, online columnist, awful announcing. He made a comment to me, and I'm going to bring it up because I thought it was so perfect. And we're talking about Chase Claypool and the lack of physicality and everything for what he is as an athletic specimen. He said he feels like the 7-footer who gets 4 rebounds a game because he just doesn't get dirty. And he brought up the name Eddie Curry. And I was like, oh my God, that is it. Chase Claypool is Eddie Curry. It just fit so much, because I don't understand it. And again, I'll bring up what I talked to Danny Parkins about last week. He said, is Chase Claypool literally the first professional athlete who is not motivated by money at all? Because this is his contract year. The effort should be, he should want, forget what he's doing when the cameras are off. When the cameras are on and other teams are putting together tape of potential free agents, his effort should be off the charts. You're only talking about, 900 plays over the course of a year, Chase. It's not that difficult to just give an effort on Sundays, but he's not doing it consistently. And, sure, he made a couple nicer plays. The effort was better overall, but he was still flat-footed. He's still not physical where he needs to be. He's not involved in the offense like he needs to be. Darnell Mooney gets his knee banged up and misses time, and Claypool, it needs to be the guy out there. And I just don't understand what is going on in his head. And I'm with you. I do not like questioning players. Like, I'm the guy that put out the tweet about Nate Davis in March about how Mike Vrabel felt about him. And the amount of times that tweet has reappeared on my timeline because people are bringing it back. Well, this is why Nate. And I just kept sitting there and said, maybe, I don't know, but I don't know what's going on with Nate Davis. And I was as frustrated as a lot of other Bears fans with him. But you're just careful because you don't know what's going on in his head. And then we find out from Brad Biggs yesterday that Nate Davis is a very close family member that's been very sick for a couple months. And this has been a whole thing with Nate, and the person just passed away. So, like, Nate's been going through it personally. And hopefully Nate takes some time off, gets his head where it needs to be, mourns and grieves like he needs to, and gets better on the field when he's ready to rejoin the team. But with Chase Claypool, and again, is something going on? Does he have something going on? I don't know. But the problem is this isn't an isolated thing with Chase. Like, oh, it's just been bad here for a couple weeks. We go back to last season. We've got a half a season of tape. And there's just something going on with Chase Claypool where you have to sit there and go, does he want to play football? I don't know what the answer is.
Do any of us know, really, Bill?
Does Chase Claypool know?
Yeah, it like you were kind of alluding to, it all comes down to interest. Is he just a really physically gifted human being who happens to be a part of a football team, or does he want to play football? And that remains to be seen. Yeah,
we'll find out here over the course of the year. Hopefully, whatever's going on with Mooney isn't a big deal. But before we get to questions and wrap this puppy up, I want to talk about a couple of the other players. One player I brought up who. I cut a little slack to as this week went on, and you got to see the all-22 was Braxton Jones, because he had a lot of penalties last week, 30 yards on penalties last week, and a couple bad plays. But then when you look at the full body of the work, the rest of it wasn't as bad. But I still sit there and go, you cannot have those were crippling holding penalties that he had last week. Now we get to this week. I understand his holding penalty was declined because it was a third down and the play was a negative play, so the Bears punted. But yet another holding penalty, another false start. He got worked on a sack. Braxton Jones, and I said this coming into the year, he was a wonderful surprise last year being able to start as a fifth-round rookie coming out of a small school like that. But he needed to show 100% that he was the guy this year, because the Bears were going to have an opportunity to have a top 10 pick and get like I don't know if it's Fashanu, but there's a lot of good tackles I think that are going to be in this draft. And you have an opportunity to get two huge anchors on the side and really protect your offense, protect your quarterback and really anchor your offensive line. And through 2 games, I am seeing regression from Braxton Jones. I am not seeing a guy taking a step to really establishing himself as a left tackle. I think Danny might be frozen, so I'm going to continue to babble, and we'll hope that his internet connection comes back. This is not your average Bears postgame show. I'm your host, Bill Zimmerman. I'm with Danny Meehan. Dan, are you back? You froze up.
Yeah, I'm back. So, sorry about that. We just had like a fuse blow or something. I just came back. So, yeah, it left, it came back, and then my internet must have detached from my phone and back to my router. It was a whole weird thing.
All right. So I'll give you the 5-second question. Braxton Jones, I didn't like what I saw last week with the penalties. This week, again, had a holding penalty. It was declined, but he had a holding penalty. He had another false start, and he got worked for a sack. I am getting concerned that Braxton Jones is regressing.
Oh, God. I'm with Braxton Jones is – okay.
All right, Danny's still freezing, so we're going to give him a couple minutes to figure things out. While I'm going to switch over here. I'm going to take some questions and comments from the audience. So again, if you're watching live, you have any questions, you want to bring it up, comments. This is your chance to vent. Bears fall to 0-2 with a really hard game coming up in Week 3 against the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead. So let me go through some of the comments. Let's start with Tony Hawthorne here, who says it's hard to have any faith in this coaching staff going forward after the first 2 games. Hope to see changes sooner rather than later. And Tony, I agree with you here. Danny and I have talked about it. The coaching here has been woeful on all aspects to me. I thought Matt Eberflus called a better game than Alan Williams did in Week 1, but it didn't mean that he didn't have issues as well, especially, again, third down, left a lot of players open. And look, bottom line here is you have to question Luke Getsy. You have to question the offensive game plan. You have to question the defensive game plan. And most importantly, and what Danny and I talked about earlier in this podcast, is you have to question Matt Eberflus kind of as the CEO and him kind of instilling his principles, whatever you want to say, into this team. And that was the one thing. I was a bigger Matt Nagy defender than pretty much anyone. And I admit Matt Nagy's offense had issues. But I always believed in Matt Nagy, the head coach. And a lot of Bears fans were, oh, he's losing the locker room and all that. He never lost the locker room. Nagy kept that thing together and, was sputtering out 8-8 seasons when it really felt like this team should have been winning 5 games, 6 games, but they were winning 8 games at a time. So I give Nagy some credit there. And Matt Eberflus, after a 3-win season, he really needs to show more as a coach. This team's going to be his team is 0-2. It is probably going to be 0-3. Then you're going to have, a pocket in the schedule there with Denver and Washington, and I think the Raiders, where there's going to be some potential for some winnable games there. And Matt Eberflus needs to make sure he keeps this team together, that he doesn't let this thing fall apart. And Danny, I think you're back there and working okay. Matt Eberflus, assuming this team falls to 0-3, really needs to make sure that he keeps this team together and keeps them focused, because 0-3, you're probably kissing the playoffs goodbye at that point, but it does not mean you have to fall to 2-15 and collapse.
It doesn't mean that. It also means that you're the defensive guy who doesn't run really use Todd Bowles as an example. Todd Bowles, Vance Joseph, Wink Martindale, et cetera, these exotic blitzing, super very complex defensive schemes. You're a guy who it's based on effort and try-hardiness and the fact that you have buy-in from your guys, right? So when you buy in, you can't be the coach who loses the locker room, right? That's what his MO is supposed to be. He's supposed to be the guy that keeps the chemistry and keeps the ability to never say die, as it were. But we don't. Only time's going to tell. And I was a big God, my track record of liking coaches who get hired by the Bears is just not great. The Matt Nagy cycle. Initially, I wanted Frank Reich, which, looking back on it, I wish that's who they would have hired. But they got Matt Nagy, and that I about fell off my chair when they hired him, because I was like, there's no way they're going to hire this guy. He's only called plays for 3 games or something like that.
Right.
And then I was like, before they hired Eberflus, I was full steam ahead on Brian Flores, and that probably would have been a disaster in and of itself, but I still stand by my thoughts on Brian Flores. I love the guy. But Eberflus was the guy that, and it might be because of the age and the decade I come from, that he felt safe and he felt comfortable because of everything that Lovie Smith represented to a younger Bears fan that I was. And I thought that he did good things in Indianapolis, not a ton of talent outside of DeForest Buckner and Shaq Leonard there in Indianapolis. And I was like, the guys seem to like him. It's buy-in. It's something that seems like it's sustainable and teachable everywhere he goes. And here we are, and I just don't know. I thought he had buy-in, and I still think he kind of does, but it's on him, especially after a really tumultuous start to 2023, to show that he does, because this can fall apart real quick.
Oh yeah, we're on the cusp of the collapse right now, and again, I think it is a safe assumption. I think they're like a 12-point underdog to Kansas City now. I think they were 9 a couple weeks ago. I think it's now 12. So,
jeez.
I mean, it's hard to imagine they can even compete in that game where it's close in the fourth quarter, let alone win that game. So this is, looking at to be an 0-3 football team, and that's going to be the cusp right there of collapse. He's got to have this team recover. And I think that's kind of a good transition to CJ Jones here, who goes, I'm wondering, where do we go from here? What's the next move? And CJ, we're all as frustrated as you are, but the bottom line here is there is not a move that to be done. I mean, you're not going to fire Luke Getsy right now. You're not going to fire Matt Eberflus. And again, I brought this up on Twitter. For those of you that want to fire Matt Eberflus, we will be lucky if he has a bad year, if they go 3-14, 4-13 kind of thing, they're going to have to fire him. But coaches' contracts are 5-year contracts now for the most part. That's pretty much the standard deal. And Matt Eberflus, assuming he has a 5-year deal, the Bears would have to eat 3 years of his head coaching contract, and he's probably making $5 million a year. They're going to have to eat $15 million to fire Matt Eberflus after this year. Sure, there'll be some offsets, but he's not going to make nearly the same kind of money as a defensive coordinator someplace else next year. They're going to have to eat an obscene amount of money. And you can sit there and complain, hey, who cares if this is what they have to do to win all that? But still, this isn't our money. This is the McCaskey's money. It's something. Mark Trestman is literally the only guy in the history of the franchise that was fired with 2 years left on his coaching contract.
And do people remember what it took for Trestman to get fired?
I mean, that was that second year was now again, we could get there. We don't know where we're going this year. We could get there, but that was the biggest dumpster fire I've ever seen in Chicago sports history.
And I just don't think, and maybe it's just me looking at the glass half full, I just don't think the locker room views him the way that locker room viewed Trestman. This is a football lifer, man. This guy gets it. Like, whether or not he can enforce it and instill it and teach it, but I don't know. Trestman was just such a different animal. Of even when he showed up, like, everyone was just like, this guy? This is what you're putting into a room full of grown, quote, forget the term, but alpha males? This is the dude you're putting in front of them?
Yeah, I never, when Mark Trestman, I remember, and I wasn't involved really in Bears media at this point when Trestman was hired, but I just remember I posted on my Facebook page when they hired him, and everyone was calling for Lovey's head. After a 10-6 season, they were calling for Lovey's head. I was just like, be careful what you wish for. You want a new head coach, I know Lovey was definitely on the way, it was on the downslope. I get all that. But Mark Trestman, I mean, you could sit there and say he's a good quarterback coach, good offensive coordinator, whatever you want to say. But the idea of this guy being a leader of men was laughable from the opening press conference. And sure enough, and everyone goes, oh, well, Trestman's first year was good. Well, no, it wasn't. The Bears went from 10-6 to 8-8. They got worse. And I understand they lost some players and everything, but this is a new coach and it was going to infuse the offense and all this. The team got worse and then collapsed. And that was the Mark Trestman, era. So if Matt Eberflus is going to get fired at the end of the year, if that's where you are as a Bears fan, you go, they got to get rid of Eberflus. It's not going to happen in season. There's just not a chance that's happening after a year plus. If it happens at the end of this season, then here's what you're looking at. The Bears won 2, 3, 4 games, and Justin Fields is so bad that Caleb Williams or Drake May is going to be the Bears quarterback in 2024. That's the kind of level of bad with a new coaching staff. That's the kind of level of bad that the Bears have to be for Eberflus to be gone, in my opinion.
I'm with you. I'm one of those people, I believe in continuity. Like, it's one of those things, like, a lot of Bears fans hate the Packers and they hate certain things. Like, I'm also a Cubs fan who's never hated the Cardinals kind of thing. I want that for my team. I want the Cardinals to be the Cubs, and I want the Bears to be the Packers. I believe in continuity. I believe in sustainability of people who know what they're doing. Like, it's the reason why I envy the Steelers. The Steelers have had 3 head coaches in the entirety of their existence. Chuck Noll, Bill.
Yeah, since Chuck Noll, they had some before that, but yeah, Chuck Noll and Cowher and Tom. And that goes back to about 1970.
Yeah, I've had 3 in the last 9 years. Like it's so it's like a long-winded way of saying like I don't want to fire people. At the same time, I also believe the fish rots at the head, and I don't know that George McCaskey has an iota of a clue of what he's doing.
Well, Danny, you brought that up, so I'll bring up Chi-Town Bear 773, who says substitute Fields for Trubisky, and the results are the same. It's this organization and the idiots who hire the dumb coaches. And look, here's the thing that's so frustrating about this team on the players and the coaches and everything. When they go elsewhere, you don't see a lot of success by these people. Now, Matt Nagy's having success in Kansas City, although, like I said, the Chiefs haven't looked great this year, but he's working with Andy Reid, right? Like John Fox, he left, he just disappeared. That was the end of John Fox's career. Ryan Pace did not get another GM spot. The Falcons are on the uptick, but at the same time, what has Ryan Pace done? Who knows? That kind of thing. But even like
bring a lot of former Bears to Atlanta.
Yeah. When players leave this organization, like they don't go on to have huge success elsewhere because that's the kind of rotten roster the Bears have had for several years. Everyone, all right, Khalil Mack, the exceptions, even Mack wasn't the same player anymore, with the Chargers, he's still impactful. But it does, and that's the frustrating thing. Like I was having conversations about how difficult it is for the media to cover this team this week because this organization is very secretive about a lot of things. And people are, oh, Ryan Pace is too secretive. Matt Eberflus is too secretive. Ted Phillips is too secretive. But the thing is everyone else is changing over the course of this complaint. This is a 10-year complaint about how the Bears run things. And we'll see if Kevin Warren starts changing things, and hopefully he does. But the only consistency around this time, now that the Bears still do this, is George McCaskey. It's very odd how he wants his team run. And I hope that Kevin Warren, if Matt Eberflus is gone and Ryan Poles gets to pick his own guy and everything, I hope we're done with consultants. There's a team president in here for a reason who understands football. This isn't Ted Phillips anymore. Bringing in Bill Polian or Ernie Accorsi to find your top guys in football operations. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. And again, when we look at Ryan Poles, and there's plenty of things to pick at here with what he's done, but in terms of him hiring Matt Eberflus, the story always was that Bill Polian narrowed this search down to 3 coaches, and then Ryan Poles got to pick from those 3. Again, I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but that's been the story that a lot of people have kind of talked about. But Bill Polian got this down, again, reportedly, to Eberflus, Dan Quinn, and Jim Caldwell. And if that's the pool you're picking from out of everybody that was available, therein lies the problem, Danny.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. It's maddening because I just feel like there's nothing we can do short of hoping for a sale of the team. And it doesn't sound like even when Virginia, not wishing anything ill on her, but even when that happens, it doesn't sound like George is just going to up and sell the team kind of thing.
No, I expect George to be around. I know Bears fans want the McCaskies to sell. I don't see any reason why. To me, George McCaskey would look at it, go, my grandpa's George Hallis, and he'd be disappointed if I sold this team. That's to me how this is just going to look. And his mother would be disappointed that he sold the team. So I just don't think it's going to happen. No,
I really hope Kevin Warren is the admission of just, I don't know what I'm doing. I truly believe in my heart of hearts as a Bears fan, George wants what's best for this organization, and he wants to see winners. This is a team, if you factor in the pre-merger championships, I believe they're still second or first all-time in NFL titles. He wants them to be great. And the league, believe it or not, wants them to be great. It's the third biggest market in the damn country. Why wouldn't they want the Bears to be relevant and good? I don't think he knows how.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's the frustrating part, I'm sure, even for him, because I'm sure he's doing what he thinks is right, and he doesn't understand why it's not working.
Yeah, it's like, if you work within the confines of an office or in any kind of thing where you have multiple employees, you don't have to be a boss. You just have to have multiple employees around you. They're like, what do you think of Bob over there as a worker? Bob's a great guy, but right? Like that's
Yeah,
George
butt guy.
McCaskey.
Yeah, he's
George
the butt
McCaskey's
guy.
the butt guy. George McCaskey's a nice man, but he does not know how to run an organization. He just doesn't. It's a problem, and this is what we're stuck with, and it's not going to change. And that's where you really have to hope that Kevin Warren knows what he's doing, where George can just kind of let Kevin cook, do what he needs to do, improve this organization from top to bottom. Because if he doesn't do it, then we're in trouble. Like right. Kevin Warren is kind of a Hail Mary hire here. Like this needed to happen, and hopefully this will work on multiple levels, because you just can't have George involved. You can't have a chairman just running, up to the podium at the end of the year every year going, well, I'm not a football fan, but I'm just a football fan. I'm not a football guy, but I'm going to make all the football decisions. That's not how you can work an organization.
God, this feels like every conversation I've ever had with my old man of just like, well, if Muggs didn't pass away, like just, oh my God. That's Muggs McCaskey, for those who don't know. He was apparently the football guy of the McCaskey clan.
Yeah, right. So, Muggs McCaskey, George Halas had 2 kids, Muggs and Virginia. And Muggs had a heart attack, I think it was, and passed away in like the mid-70s, like at a very young age. Virginia was the only heir. George passes away, George Halas passes away. Virginia gets the team. Her husband is Ed McCaskey. Ed runs the team for a while, doesn't know what he's doing, passes it to the oldest son, Michael. Michael doesn't know what he's doing. Of course, Michael gets sick, passes it to George. George doesn't know what he's doing. And this is since, 1982. So somehow, some way, the Bears built up a dominant team in the 80s. But this is the cycle of incompetence, because there's no one at the top that knows what they're doing.
Sorry, Bill, I didn't mean to derail anything. This conversation just feels like this is what I do every year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's Groundhog Day over and over with this team, and that's where it's so frustrating. And that's where I'm trying to keep my head up on this season, because I'm starting to get to this point where it's a lost season, and I'm worried. Like if we get to week 5 or 6 of this season and Justin Fields isn't improving, and we're seeing him continue to regress, and Matt Eberflus is in the guy, and this team is 1-5 or 0-6 or whatever it is. And we're sitting here going, we've got to endure another 10, 11 games with this team, knowing that this is a rudderless ship that is going nowhere. And we're just going to wait until the 2024 off season to see, exactly where we are. And that's the thing. I'll jump over here to this comment from Donald Jabibski. I hate to say it, but I see an end of season 1 or 2 wins that will let the Bears miss out on the number 1 overall pick, and also lets George convince himself to keep Fluss. Fluss plus May ain't going to work out, and it's obvious. Now, I would say this. I do not think if the Bears, assuming it's Caleb Williams 1 and Drake May 2, assuming that's what happens, if the Bears are in a position to draft either of them and need to, I have a hard time believing Matt Eberflus is going to keep his job, even with potentially 3 years left on that contract. You're talking, if they have the second pick in the draft, you're talking about 4 wins tops. You're going to be talking about Matt Eberflus, who's going to be 7-27 as a head coach at that time. Mm-hmm. So, Donald, I'm going to disagree with you there. Now, if the Bears go 6-11, and Justin Fields puts up the numbers we said at the beginning of the year, where he has 3,500 yards and 600, rushing yards, but is up and down, interceptions are high, decisions are questionable. To me, that's about the worst case scenario, because Matt Eberflus could keep his job. You're going to have to punt on the quarterback in a potentially really good quarterback class. And usually what happens after a really good quarterback class, the next year quarterback class is not any good. And that's where the Bears were having to pick, ended up picking Mitch Trubisky. I understand Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson were better choices, but this is kind of what happens here. If the Bears are undecided on Justin Fields and go, let's give him and Matt Eberflus and everyone another year because we're just not sure where we are as a franchise, that to me is the worst case scenario.
That is the worst case scenario. And I said it at the beginning of the show. The worst case outcome of this whole season is that we don't have any answer on Justin. That's the worst outcome, that he's left enough to show you something, and he's showing you enough to question some things, but he hasn't shown enough to be like, all right, well, it's time to move on. But the question I have for you, Bill, is regarding that whole little rant you just went on. do you trust that Poles is the guy to even make the right decision on the quarterback?
I don't really. I'm on the fence with Ryan Poles. And again, I liked a lot more what he did this year than his first year, but there's plenty of questions that I have on Ryan Poles. Now, I will, and this is what I keep saying about Ryan Poles. Because Ryan Pace messed up so much at the end of his tenure, and I supported Ryan Pace for a lot of it. I think Ryan Pace did a fine job through 2019. He built a team that went 12-4 in 2018. 2019 wasn't as good, but he brought back the team, right? He couldn't re-sign everyone. He brought in Buster Screen. He did the best he could with no money left to kind of keep that 2018 core together with the plan that Mitch Trubisky is going to break out and we're going to continue down this path. Mitch didn't break out, things derailed. But after 2019, Ryan Pace just held on to his hope that Mitch Trubisky would be the guy and tried to save his job, punted money into the future, brought in guys he shouldn't have brought in. It was a hot mess. From 2020 and 2021, it was a disaster. Now Ryan Poles comes into a team where he's got to jettison a ton of bad money. He's got already a ton of dead money from bad contracts and money that was punted into the future with those the extra years on the end of the deals. Like, Pace made him a mess, but because George didn't handle things properly either, George needed to fire Nagy and Pace after 2020, but he decided to give him one more year. The Russell Wilson thing falls apart, so Pace pivots and gets Justin Fields. Now at that point, you need to give Pace and Nagy 2 more years to develop Justin Fields. Now what the Bears have done is what I can't think of any organization has done in the last 15 years, and that's have a new regime come in with a rookie quarterback that you have to try, and a second-year quarterback then, that you have to try and develop. The new regime usually gets to bring in their own quarterback and start over. But because things were such a mess, you got rid of the old regime and brought in a new regime and said, here's Justin Fields and a pile of garbage. What can you do? That's not how you build a franchise back up.
No, I agree. I think I'm at the point, not at the point, but I'm getting to the point where if you get to this, you're going to punt on Fields, you're going to fire Eberflus, like, just be done with it. Just end it all. Like, let Kevin Warren get his whole own regime in. And hopefully he's not bringing in the corpse of a Corsi or Bill Polian and telling him who he should hire. Like, he's got connections. He knows people. He's been around football. That was the ideology behind bringing in a Kevin Warren, right? Like, he's not going to need to talk to other people. Right. He's going to be able to know who he has to talk to them, and go through his own process. Now, I like you, I'm conflicted on Poles because I get what he was doing, like ripping it down to the absolute studs, just like Ryan Pace did, building it back up and bringing in his guys, his supremely athletic draft classes, and making sure he doesn't cripple the cap, as it were, right away. That being said, I think he can still be admonished for issues of double dipping, for instance, this year at the defensive tackle position and a not great defensive tackle class. Gervon Dexter had no business being drafted where he was drafted. Like him or not, like, I don't wish ill on the kid. I don't think he's going to be awful or anything. But when he was picked, I remember where I was. I was watching with my wife, and I looked at her, and I go, that guy shouldn't have gone until the 3rd round minimum. Like, that's where he should have been. And you're taking him that early? Like, I'm not claiming that I'm an expert, because I'm not. But I also trust what my eyes tell me. And if my eyes are telling me what other experts are telling me, then something's got to be lining up, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. With Ryan Poles, I'm on the fence, and I think there's enough at this point with what Poles has built up that if Matt Eberflus is fired at the end of the year, I don't think Ryan Poles is fired.
No, he's going to get a second coach.
He will get a second coach. Yeah,
we're going to hear all the stories come out about how he was saddled with Matt Eberflus.
Right. And maybe he was. Like I said, if you're picking from Matt Eberflus, Dan Quinn, and Jim Caldwell, if that's accurate, and I'm not saying 100% it is, but if that's accurate, I probably would have picked Matt Eberflus too, because Dan Quinn's a retread and Jim Caldwell's, out of the league at this point. Like that's basically, if that's what he had to pick from, that's a bad selection to pick from. So I think Ryan Poles gets another crack at a head coach, and I hope, if that's the case, if we have this kind of year that it looks like it may be, and there's a new coach coming in 2024, that coach needs to be an offensive-minded head coach. I am so sick of having defensive-minded head coaches in the last 10 years. I know Nagy wasn't, but between Fox and this is not how the NFL operates anymore. I would always hire an offensive head coach.
Maybe I'm just stuck in the past. I just want the best guy I believe to be the head coach, and I thought Eberflus might have been that, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't necessarily. I believe Sean McDermott's a good head coach. I think John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin are two of the best in the league at what they do. Bill Belichick's the most accomplished head coach of all time.
But here's what I would say to that: John Harbaugh, Bill Belichick, and Mike Tomlin were hired before this current era of football.
Sure, and that's an absolute fair assessment. I just think when you get to this point of only hire the offensive play caller, you're going to start hiring underwhelming coaches because you're trying to get to this certain level of offensive play caller. Kevin O'Connell had no business being hired when he did. And I know he won 13 games last year.
Luckily.
And now the regression monster is already rearing its ugly head. They're 0-2 in one-score games when they were 7-2 last year in them, right. Something like that. And I'm not saying Kevin O'Connell is going to be a bad head coach either, just like I was never saying that Matt Eberflus was going to be a good head coach. I'm just saying there's things to look at.
All right. We'll wrap up with this last comment because why not? And there's three comments, so I'm just going to pick this one because it's succinct. Bagent from William Armstead Buzani. When do you want to see Tyson Bagent out there, Danny?
I don't. Short of Fields getting hurt, I don't ever want to see Tyson Bagent play meaningful football. Because you know why? He's probably not any good. He's a fun story. He's got the cool father who was like a 17-time arm wrestling champ or something like that. It's a good story. He was an awesome subdivision college quarterback. If he's your starting NFL quarterback and you're trying to tie some sort of like minimal success to him, you're doomed.
Yeah, no. And I'm with you. No, Bagent shouldn't be out there. We should not see if Tyson Bagent is the future. I mean, literally in the last, 25 years, Tony Romo is literally the only undrafted quarterback that went on to have a significant level of success. So is Tyson Bagent that guy? Maybe, but it's about a 1 in 500 shot that he is. So let's just keep him as a backup and see what happens over the next 3 years. That's all we need to do with Tyson Bagent. But
already should they play Bagent?
Danny, let's wrap up the podcast. Do you have any final thoughts about this game, this season, the coaching fields, anything you want? The floor is yours.
Final thoughts. They better get it together. I don't expect them to win at Kansas City, which of course means they're going to either keep it competitive or sneak one out by 2 points in the final seconds or something like that with a Cairo Santos revenge field goal against his former team or something. But I want a true answer on Fields, more or less. Let him rip it. Give the outlaw his rifle back, to reference what I said earlier. Give the gunslinger his weapon.
Yeah.
Call the runs. Let him rip it. God forbid he throw an interception, because you know what? You learn a lot more from mistakes than you do from successes. The guy has never failed in his life until the NFL. And how much of that is his own doing? I don't know. How much is it all the coaching and the situation's doing? I don't know. I want an answer. Let Justin do what makes him special and live with the results. You're not winning anything meaningful this year anyway. That's what I want.
Yeah, and final thoughts for me, and we don't need to preview the Kansas City game. Obviously, it's 7 days away. But in this Kansas City game, I just want to say, as the one listener said, what's next? What can we do next? Let Justin be Justin. Move the pocket. Get him away from Chris Jones. Get him out there, cut the field in half, do some things, work in some more play action, get the ball down the field 20, 30 yards to DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney if he's out there. Do some things to let Justin Fields be him, because you need to start getting him in a rhythm. We talked about how he's a rhythm player in a game. You need to start getting him as a rhythm player in the season, because he's not there yet. He's very disjointed. He's putting together a couple throws here, a couple runs here, but he's not being who he can be. So to me, I don't care about winning or losing this game next week, because I'm already assuming it's a loss. But to me, let's actually see Justin Fields start going in the right direction, because right now he's spinning his wheels in the mud, and we can't have that. We have to see some progression this year from Justin Fields to get some answers and get us somewhere this year, Danny, because it's not going anywhere. And I will say as a final thought, if you go back and listen to the end of my Bears Banter podcast with Danny Parkins, where I finish every week with a prediction, you will hear me say Tampa Bay Bucks 27, Bears 17. So I'll just awesome. pat myself right there.
Don't hurt yourself. You know what? Screw it. Just bring in Greg Roman as a special advisor. What could go wrong?
Besides Fields running the ball 25 times a game, nothing. All right, let's wrap this puppy up. Not your average Bears post-game show. I'm Bill Zimmerman. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Bill T. Zimmerman. My guest this week has been Danny Meehan at Dan Meehan 90.
Yep, you got it.
All right, at Dan Meehan 90 on Twitter/X. And of course, you can catch me in my podcast this week. I should have Sylvian from ESPN. He should be the Bears Banter guest this week. And catch Danny on the live stream Thursday evening on Bare Bones with Mason West. Danny, thanks so much. We'll do this again down the road, and hopefully we'll have something positive to say.
Thanks for having me, and sorry about my technical issues there.
No problem. We got through it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.